Welcome to the Service Contractor All-Star Podcast. We talk about how to make more money, grow your team members, and build the business of your dreams. I'm the host, Trevor Maddox, owner of Motion Ops, the premier software for service contractors. Enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome to another great episode of Service Contractor All-Star. I'm your host, Trevor Maddox, and I am absolutely stoked about this episode. We have Ari Meisel, Less Doing here joining us from New Jersey, so we're stoked to have you. As a little background, and then obviously Ari, go over a little bit, but just for our listeners, Ari's a productivity expert. In my mind, one of the top in the country, business coach and author, dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and executives optimize, automate, and outsource for greater efficiency. He's the founder of Less Doing, an author of books like The Replaceable Founder. He's also transformed how leaders manage time, delegate effectively, and scale their businesses. Through coaching, speaking, and innovative systems, he empowers clients to achieve more by doing less. All great things that I think our listeners can appreciate. So clients include Tony Robbins, Damon John, Joe Polish, Dan Sullivan, and Jay Abraham. So, Ari, thanks so much for being here, my man. I'm stoked about this episode. So,
thanks for having me.
Just for our listeners, so, obviously our listeners, I think you're aware of this, service contractors, a lot of contractors, landscapers, a lot of cleaning companies, actually. A decent amount of our clients are cleaning companies too. They're listening because they all want to, make more money while doing less, a lot of things that you preach and talk about, but just so they kind of get to know you a little bit. I mean, I know you very well. I've read some of your books, know some of the people that you've worked with in the past, heard a lot of good things about you over the years. So can you just kind of just give us a brief intro, who you are, where you're from, kind of what you've been doing and how you got here?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in New York City and I went to college in Pennsylvania, the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School. And then when I got out of there, I started working in construction, doing real estate development stuff in upstate New York. And when I was 23, I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a chronic inflammatory condition that is considered to be incurable. And that's where everything started. Basically, I went from working 18 hours a day to working an hour a day. And the sort of pressure cooker that created made me come up with a brand new system of productivity, which I called Less Doing. And so I was actually able to overcome this incurable illness and still have been 18 years later, and started experimenting and I guess productivity hacking in a way and came up with the system. And over the years, I've written several books. I've taught multiple different seminars, workshops, spoken on stages in 7 different countries, and focus my time now on one-on-one high-level private coaching with founders and CEOs and COOs.
That's fantastic. And I think the really cool thing about your story is you're kind of forced into this productivity hacking, right? You didn't really have much of an option. Like, you had to spend a lot of your time dealing with your disease. And if I understand correct, you said it's Crohn's disease. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Are you still fighting it, or you've been able to overcome it? Where are we at right now?
We're good.
We're good. Okay.
So it took me about 2 years to get off all my meds and start feeling really good again.
That's great.
And that was about 18 years ago now. So, almost 19 years ago. So and to the extent that I went to the doctor like a year ago for just sort of regular checkup, and he said to me, he's like, if you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known about it. And that's supposed to be impossible. So
wow,
I ended up doing a TEDx talk on this thing, and then actually, as far as I know, I've helped at least several hundred other people get off of their meds and feel better and not have Crohn's either.
I don't want to diverge a little bit, but I'm going to. What did you do to kind of overcome it, my man? Like, just sounds really cool.
So there's definitely a big element of it that was diet and supplement related, and there was a lot of experimentation there. And everybody is going to be a little bit different in that regard, but for the most part, what I would say is that it's not about gluten-free or vegetarian or this or that. It's really about having a diet that is high in very, very high in good fats and very low in sugar. Essentially, is like the easiest way I could break it down. That seems to be what has worked the best for the most people.
I mean, it's crazy how much sugar just wrecks your body in general. So it's interesting.
Well, it's very inflammatory.
Yeah,
it's just very inflammatory. And if you look at there's so many conditions that have an inflammatory component to them.
Yeah.
But stress was really a big part of it. And in a lot of ways, that's where Less Doing was born from, was this idea of sort of creating a systematic way of dealing with overwhelm.
That's amazing. And the construction, home service, cleaning industries in general, I would say a lot of them deal with a lot of overwhelm, a lot of stress, right? and we deal with it too, because we do software for these guys, and it's like we will schedule meetings and they're like, oh man, I'm stressed. I'm on a job. I can't make this meeting. And it's like, we hear it a lot. And so I think this is an ongoing issue that a lot of our audience could benefit from your insights and what you learned. And I think your story is so amazing because you were forced into it, right? You're like, I got this disease. I need to deal with this disease. And before, you said you're working 18 hours a day down to 1. And I think the cool thing about your story is you're working in a related field as a lot of our listeners, right? So construction, real estate development, everything else. So can you walk us through like just that scenario of 18 hours down to 1 hour, and like what you did to start implementing systems to successfully navigate this and really do 2 things: buy back your time, but then also, deal with the overwhelm? Can you just walk us through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. And just for more context, right? You touched on it, but basically the way I got my start in real estate is that I was visiting a friend in upstate New York, and he showed me these old buildings from the 1860s, these beautiful cigar warehouses, these brick and timber buildings. And I was 20 years old, and I was like, I could build lofts here, a loft district, because I grew up in Soho in New York.
It's awesome.
And I made an offer to buy the buildings out there. They were very, very, very cheap because it's a very depressed real estate market where I was. And then very quickly I realized, hey, an Ivy League education in real estate development doesn't teach you how to build anything. So the deal was that anybody that worked on the job had to teach me their trade. So I spent literally the next 3 years learning and doing every construction trade there is. So
It's awesome.
I have repointed a historic brick in the middle of the winter. I've done street work. I've done asbestos removal, plumbing, roofing. I've done all of it.
Yeah.
To some level. And I managed a team of 60 people, many of whom had been doing this for they were like generational masons and things like that. And so it was a really interesting experience in not only learning the actual trades themselves, and the value in that to me is immeasurable, because I could have an intelligent conversation with really any trade at this point still about how long it would take to do something and what the cost might be, and have at least enough sense to know what I'm talking about. But it also taught me a lot about how I sort of manage my time and manage people and lead, and it was a real crash course in a lot of ways. But so, like I said, I was working 18 hours a day, and then when I got really sick, and it wasn't so much that I was dealing with the disease, it was more that I was just so weak that I couldn't even get that much done.
Yeah.
So the first thing is that question is really the genesis of everything that's come since then, because to this day, I really like asking clients and people like, hey, what would it look like? What would you do if you could only work an hour a day? And if you ask somebody, hey, what would you do if you had to leave the office by 4, right? You had to leave the office an hour early. Most people just say they'd skip lunch. That's a pretty easy one. But if you ask that same person, like, well, what if you only had an hour? It's a real stumper, right? Because it requires such a different way of thinking. Because if you only have an hour a day to get things done, the question at that point really isn't what would you do? It's what wouldn't you do?
Yeah.
And if all the things that you wouldn't do still need to get done, then who or what is going to do them for you?
Yep.
So the way the framework developed was that I wanted to optimize, automate, and outsource everything in my life and my business in order to be more effective. And that order is really important. So what typically happens, and you see this in all sorts of businesses, you definitely see this in with contractors, is that the easiest answer is just get more people. And that's a lot of times it's not the right answer.
Yeah, especially if you want to make money. You can't just throw people at a problem and expect to make money at the end of the day, right?
And also, like, it ends up giving you a lot of times it ends up being more headaches than not. And part of the reason for that is that if we skip over the first step, which is for me is optimize, where we're looking at how we do what we do, why we do it the way we do it, things like that, what systems we use and why, like what problem are we actually trying to solve, rather than just here's tools or here's methods or whatever. If we skip over that and we just outsource and we hire more people, we bring in more people without systems, then we're just accelerating the problem in a way, right? Because
Yep.
it's just more people to make more mistakes. Same thing with automation. That's why automation is the second step. Because if we automate an inefficient problem, all we're going to do is get the result faster, right? So technology will amplify habits. If we have good habits, it's going to make them better. If we have bad habits, it's going to make them worse. And they all have to start with those habits and those systems. The original method is called less doing, as in less doing, more living. But eventually that morph into more of a business focused methodology that I call the replaceable founder.
Nice.
And the idea is we want to make everybody in the business as replaceable, not replaced, but replaceable as possible. And that usually means replacing them up, not out. But to do that, we need to create systems and processes that replace what they do well so that they're not stuck. Because a lot of times that's what happens is we get stuck. And what's fascinating is as businesses grow and as contractors' businesses grow, cleaning companies grow, and the revenue becomes enough that you can start to hire people to do the actual work. Now you get stuck doing sales and customer service, right? And eventually, hopefully, you can be able to hire people to do those roles. But again, you need to have like a system in place. So all this stuff starts with optimizing and looking at how we do what we do now. How are we scheduling? How are we spending our time? How much time are we spending on the bookkeeping versus the sales versus looking for new leads? And then another thing, and I'll pause for it. Another thing is that at different revenue levels, we tend to see the same problems come up over and over. So if before somebody let's just say between $100,000 and $300,000 revenue, the focus really at that point is revenue generation and sales. Like,
Yep.
yes, reputation is important, customer service is important, but it really kind of falls by the wayside. Like you need money coming in. And so if you're in that range, your 90% of your focus should be on generating revenue, finding new leads. At this point, I would say like making TikToks and Instagram videos because that content does great.
Yep.
And it's a really easy way to sort of differentiate yourself in a market. But then between 300,000 and $1 million, that's when you really start to look at systems that replace the things that you're doing well, not people, systems. And I would say that en masse, until you get to $1 million in revenue consistently, you really should not be looking at growing a team. Sure, you could have one partner, one assistant, or one whatever, maybe one or two people. But before you really want to start growing a team, if you're doing that before you get to $1 million, you're putting yourself in a very precarious situation. And I've definitely seen companies that are doing $600,000 revenue and they have 12 full-time employees. Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's tough. Optimizing and automating. I think I really like this perspective because I don't know your experience, but I find a lot of times, like when you really dive into what people are doing, it's like, holy crap, I could have one person do what two people are doing or three people are doing, right? Like, and as far as optimizing, and I don't know what your process is, but I find that one thing is like creating an ideal batching schedule and seeing how closely they're actually following it. A lot of times people are vastly off from that, and that causes a lot of issues. But like the actual process of optimizing itself, like what are some steps or recommendations that you kind of give to people as far as optimizing what's actually happening?
So there's two main things. One is tracking, right?
Yeah.
So we can do so much tracking nowadays and so easy and without even thinking about it.
Yep.
Everything from, I've got, an Aura ring on right now. Like I don't have to ever think about tracking my steps or my sleep or any of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But we can track, if you are doing stuff on the computer, we can track what we're doing on the computer with things like rescue time and stuff like that. But even just doing something as simple as like an hourly inventory of your day.
Yeah.
Right. And I see this with contractors. I've seen this a lot. And I've worked with a number of contractors, but if that's not clear already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So between 9 and 10, it was like went to 4 different job sites. Like, okay, great. Like, and that's so typical. You see like people doing their rounds every day.
It's like, do you really need to go to all 4 job sites every day, or can you skip a day?
Right. That's one. Or is it, like, could there possibly be a trade that's already there that can send you some pictures of things, right? Like there's some ways to fix that up, but.
Or could you use a software like Motion Ops to get photos uploaded automatically for you?
Also good, right? Exactly. And that would be an optimization of 100%.
Yeah.
Right. But so I think that it's, especially when you're spending a lot of time moving around. So like I don't have my own computer. So this is my 13-year-old son's gaming setup.
I love it.
I'm on right now.
I love
So I haven't owned my own computer in probably 6 years. I do everything from my phone, which is by design, right? It's like, it's an efficiency thing because if I can do it while I'm moving, I can get a lot done very quickly in small amounts of time.
It's awesome.
I also have 5 children, so I'm whether I'm on a soccer field or at a school pickup, like I'm moving all the time. The problem with that is that it's really easy to lose track of how you're spending time on things, right? Because if you're in the car a lot, for example, moving from job to job or, working in the car or having lunch in the car, like, which is not uncommon. And I've done it too. I certainly do it. Sometimes it becomes a little bit more difficult, but we can still track those things. If we just have something as simple as like an hourly reminder, what'd you do over the last hour? You write that down for 3 or 4 days. I promise you, you'll be very, very astounded what that looks like.
Yeah, I find the time tracking is amazing, and getting your team to do it, you can start finding a lot of inefficiencies very quickly, right?
I know a good example of that is like a lot of people will tell you that like office workers in particular will say like, oh, I'm spending so much time on email, like what's your biggest distraction? Oh, it's email. I spend hours a day on email. And what you end up finding is either they're spending a lot less time than they think, actually, minutes to like in that, or they're just doing it extremely inefficiently, right?
Yeah.
They're spending a lot more time than they need to.
Like, does it take you 3 hours to read 5 emails?
Right, but you see that, right? And then with someone like that, it might be like, well, look, you didn't have to give that person a 7 paragraph response, right? You could have just been like, yes, and do that, right? So we see so there's those two sides of the inefficiency. One is like, we're very bad at estimating how long things take, and that's goes back to like Parkinson's law, which work expands to fill the time allotted to complete it. Most of the time, you give somebody, it's actually construction is a really good example of this in general because, uh, somebody tells you, oh, it's going to take 2 weeks to drywall that room, and it's like, well, I
Yeah.
only have a week. Right. So it's like
Figure out
either
a way.
you work later, you bring in another person or whatever. But like if you and you're like, oh, that's okay. I don't need it for 3 weeks. It'll take 3 weeks magically. So but that's just human nature. That's not anybody doing anything nefarious. And as such, we're really bad at estimating how much time or effort we use on something. And to put a bow on that, more often than not, when I hear somebody, and I hear this all the time, somebody says like, oh, I just don't have enough time. I just don't have enough time. 90% of the time, they have
Yeah.
too much time. And I push back on them and say that. It's like, you just have too much time, actually, and you're just using it really
Yeah.
inefficiently.
No, I like that. And as far as just optimizing, like in our own business, our own home service business we have, it's like I feel like we're always optimizing sales scripts, recruiting scripts, and making those better, right? I feel like there's always micro wins you can get just by reviewing what people are saying and how they're saying and trying to get them to say it better, right? I think there's a lot you can do from just an optimization standpoint. And literally just by having like the same salesperson, but better trained, better sales script, they can 2, 3x what another salesperson can do.
Yeah, and if you're doing it at volume, by the way, there's some really cool AI tools for that now. Like, I don't know if you've seen
Choir,
Choir,
no,
for
I haven't.
example. So, Choir will analyze calls in
Oh, yeah.
real time, actually, and it can tell somebody like, "Oh, you're going
Yeah.
too fast," or like you got to
That's
the
awesome.
too early. So you can, yeah. So there's a lot of ways to analyze that stuff in a really granular fashion.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of some of the AI sales tools, and I've tested a few out. Yeah, I think there's some really cool technology coming there. So, awesome. Anything else you can think of as far as just the optimization step that would be beneficial? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot that companies can do, but I think so far is a pretty good list for them to look at, right?
So I have one really big one for you, which is if there was ever a silver bullet in productivity, it would be asynchronous
Yeah.
communication. So the exact opposite of what we're doing right now, right? This is synchronous.
Yep.
I'm talking and you can respond, vice versa. The nice thing about talking to a group like this is that most people are familiar with the Nextel
Yeah.
short
Yeah,
talk
I
window.
remember those.
Remember that?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of tools like that we can use now, and one of them is called Voxer, which is really good. The one that I'm currently using mostly is called Carbon Voice, and it's actually how I do all of my coaching. So 100% of my coaching, or sorry, at the entry level tier, 100% of my coaching is done asynchronously. So I don't do workshops, I don't do Zoom calls, I don't do any of that stuff. It is all asynchronous voice messages back and forth, and that means that I'm able to work with clients in 17 time zones at whatever time works best for me and only spend about 20 minutes a day working on
Yeah.
coaching my clients. It also means that I can hear a message, think about it, and then respond with a really thoughtful, well done answer. So, and I do all my sales calls that way, or sales calls. So people have to get on the app, talk to me, we go back and forth and then decide if it's a good fit for them. And then they start.
That allows you to batch your communication too, right? You have it scheduled. Hey, from this time to this time, I do this.
Exactly.
And instead of having like 7 sales calls that are stacked up like all throughout the day, you could literally just shrink it down into 30 minutes a day, right?
Yep, you can also listen at multiple speeds, like, it's the best thing ever, but also for team meetings, for daily huddles, for all sorts of things, you can, and that's what I said, I do everything on my phone. While I'm walking from this bedroom out to my car to go pick up my daughter, I can make 7, calls, on Voxer and just or Carbon and just batch out a whole bunch, and then they get back to me and they want it. I go back to my life essentially.
No, that's great, man. I love it. So optimize, then it's automate, then outsource, right? So as far as it goes, automating, what sort of now? I'm sure there's tons with AI right now, right? And I know before you guys, like you're using a lot of tools that you're recommending, but what sort of things should people be looking at right now with AI and everything else to really help automate their businesses?
I mean, obviously there's ChatGPT, right? And a lot of the AI stuff, which cannot be undersold.
Yeah.
Like it's the greatest thing ever. And I actually, as somebody who has had large teams under me before, I've had hundreds of VAs working with me at different times. For the last year and a half, basically, I have not had a single team member or VA because I've basically been doing everything with
It's awesome.
ChatGPT and other tools, but mostly ChatGPT. So you can use they should be using it for marketing and stuff. They should be using it to keep track of clients and how jobs are going and what issues might have come up, and then how they can roll that into future conversations that they have with other ones. One of the biggest underrated features I think in ChatGPT particularly is projects. So are you familiar with projects?
No, I'm not actually.
Okay. So there's a lot of people who are like power users and they don't use the projects feature. So at the base of it, it just looks like a folder. But what you can do with a project is you can create a project and then give it a specific set of instructions and even documents. And then within that project, you can have multiple chats. So I'm involved in a couple different businesses. I'm also the vice president of our local rescue squad. I'm a volunteer EMT, a couple of different things in town. So I have a different project for each one of these sort of entities I'm involved in. And then within my business one, I have a different chat for each of my coaching clients. So if they send me a 5-page document that their team prepared, I can throw it in there and then reference it later. In the rescue squad, I have one chat that is just for doing social media. I have another one about recruiting, another one for operations, another one for finance. So it's almost like having individual team members within those different business entities that you can talk to whenever you want. And again, goes back to asynchronous. I could be walking down the street with the dog and have 6 conversations with my different team members in ChatGPT. So that's a really, really big one. But then the other one, which has been around for a while, is Zapier. And Zapier is like the glue that ties together different apps and tools. So the one there is that you should be thinking about the word every. Right. So anytime you say the word every time I get a new job, every time I do a new quote, every time I visit a prospective client, the word every should tell you that there is a repetitive and thereby automatable opportunity. And so instead of having you do it manually or having a person do it, see if there isn't a way to automate it, which I guarantee you there probably is. And what you end up doing is getting there faster and reducing errors.
So we're talking about projects for ChatGPT. So I just want to understand that a little better. I think our guests are intrigued. I know I'm intrigued. So is that kind of like combining ChatGPT with Dropbox and folders, or like what exactly is it doing, just so we kind of understand that a little better?
Yeah, so not quite, but not too far off. So basically, I wouldn't call it like file storage per se, but you definitely can feed it multiple different kinds of files, whether it's PDFs or transcripts or photos and things like that. And then the way it sort of acts is it's an an individual that is versed in that particular set of information and can have an intelligent conversation with you about that thing. That's the way I see it. Right. So like I was saying with the rescue squad, for example, as vice president, I kind of deal with a whole bunch of different things. So I have one chat. So that in the rescue squad project, it's basically the description is like, you're going to be my advisor for all things having to do with the Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad. And then in the documents, it has our bylaws, our handbook, the last couple of years of budget documents I put in there just for reference, whatever. So then I have a different a set of chats within it. So there is one chat that is the CFO. Then there's another chat that is the operation and policy committee person. Then there's the chat for social media, and then there's the chat for recruiting. So what happens is if we have an operations committee meeting and they share the agenda with some policy updates, I can drop those into that particular chat and be like, what do I need to know? What do I need to say about that? I don't have to explain anything. The history is there, and it can reference other chats within that same project. So an example of that is I have a health project. And in the health project, I have a biohacking chat, which is where all of my like test results, because I still do a lot of testing and stuff, just because I'm still a biohacker.
Yeah.
So I've got like blood tests and scans and all sorts of things in there. But then I have a meal tracker which is, by the way, ChatGPT is the greatest meal tracker ever.
It's awesome.
And then I have a recipes one. So if I find like a recipe, this has been really fun too. So if you find like a recipe on Instagram where they have the recipe is in the description, basically, I can just screenshot that, drop that into ChatGPT, and like keep this for later. So then what happens is if I'm in the food log one, I'll say like, oh, I just had this meal. Like, what should I have for dessert? And I can take a picture of my fridge. And so like it'll be like, oh, well, why don't you take that apple and this peanut butter and do that? But it'll also be like, oh, well, you have the stuff to make that, Greek yogurt cookie dough bite that you saved last week. Why don't you do that? Like,
Wow.
so it really feels like I have like a team of people around me and each one knows different things. And I like, so I can have a conversation with that person.
That's awesome. I love it. So it's kind of like you're building personas of ChatGPT based on these projects or these folders, right? So
Yeah, more or less. And then they learn across different lines of information.
now I've heard about this. I haven't dove in a ton into this, but are there ways to build around those personas like AI agents and things like that, I believe, right?
Yeah, you could in theory. So I, oddly enough, like as much as I use it, I have not gotten into the operator account level yet because in what I've seen, it's not quite where it needs to be yet.
Yeah.
But also what's been interesting is just like sort of using it like a virtual assistant. I can get it very, very close to the point where I just have to go in and do the last 5%.
Now, that being said, I think the virtual agent aspect is huge and revolutionary. I think a lot of our listeners should look into it. You also brought up Zapier. I think Zapier is a fantastic thing. Like you said, if you ever say every, you need to look into different Zaps and things that
Yep.
Zapier can do. So with Motion Ops, we've got integration for Zapier. Same exact reason. We understand how important that is to automate. And, as a software, we can build a certain amount of things to help people be more productive. But Zapier is just so powerful. It ties you into so many different apps. I think it's up to 7,000 right now. But what are some interesting Zaps or things that you often end up recommending clients look into or using that maybe they're not aware of? Just some interesting ones to think about.
So there's a lot of ones around client onboarding, I think is really, or customer journey. So social media is another one. That's an easy one, honestly, is like
Yeah.
just to get to multiple different places at once. But customer journey is one where especially busy contractors or busy operators, it's the first thing to go when they're like, yeah, I'd love to be able to send a handwritten note to this client for signing up with me, but I just didn't have the time, you know? So customer journey is a really big one. So you start to map out like what does it look like the first time you meet with somebody, then maybe the second time, then you sign them up, then work begins, then you have an anniversary of the first time you worked with them and they want to make, sort of stay top of mind. All of those things, all of them, including even sending a voicemail to that person with your actual voice, can be automated. So if you start to look at like map out what an ideal customer journey looks like in terms of them having a world-class experience, becoming your client, and ultimately, hopefully becoming a raving fan, that doesn't happen by accident. Doing good work is not enough. So all you can start to look at those things, and again, 100% of that stuff is automatable.
I love it. Cool. Anything else as far as automating that we should be thinking of? I think ChatGPT and Zapier are great ones. Anything else that you think are like really helpful, or those are the main ones?
I think those are the big ones.
That being said, the last step is outsource. And I agree that it should be the last step. I think, the default of most business owners is throwing people at problems or throwing money at problems. I think you can do a lot with those first two steps, right? Really optimizing, diving into what you're doing and improving what you have, then automating what you can, because that's amplifying what people do. And I'm actually more of the opinion, I don't think, sorry, before I move into the question about outsourcing, I want to go back to this one concept. I'm more of the opinion that I think AI is going to go more of the direction of actually amplifying what a lot of people can do. So one person can do 100 times what they could do today and stuff like that. Maybe that's more of my positive outlook, but that's just kind of the way I see things. What's your opinion on just that with AI, the direction AI is going, stuff like that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, like I said, technology amplifies habits, right? So good habits are going to be made better.
Yep.
Bad habits will be made worse. And I have to say, honestly, like contractors in general, cleaning companies, stuff like that, those are the ones that are really,
Pretty hard to
it's-
replace.
those are the ones that are protected for a while.
Yeah.
One of the things I posted this on social media the other day, which is just something I had said in a conversation, was we need to stop worrying so much about AI replacing jobs and just stop training people to do the jobs that AI is going to replace.
Yeah, it's shifting. It's not getting rid of stuff. It's just shifting in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, so do you have kids?
Yeah, I got 3 kids. Yeah.
How old?
So I have a 6-year-old, 9-year-old, and 11-year-old.
Awesome. Okay. So I've got 13 down to 2. And I think that, and I don't think this is a parental thing. It's not a comment on people as parents. This is more just a generational thing. I think that a lot of the younger generation is not learning trades. They're not learning life skills.
It's sad.
And I think we need to get back to that in a lot of ways.
I agree 100%.
AI will do all the other stuff, right? And in a lot of ways, I believe that the automation, and this is people, before there was AI stuff, people always used to say to me, oh, if you're automating everything, like you're getting rid of the human element. It's like, no, you don't get it. Like automating all this stuff means that I can do the human element. It means that I can make a personal phone call because all the other BS is being taken care of by automations.
Yeah, I think the amplification, that's the way I've always looked at it, just amplifying, right? Now, with outsourcing, okay, so that's a step that we moved to. The last one. So outsourcing, what sort of advice do you have for our listeners when they get to this step, right? So first they need to, obviously improve what they've got. They need to, work on automating it, right? Optimizing and then automating. Now they need to go outsource. So what are they going to do now? Like we want to hire, we want to make sure it's the right hire. What sort of advice do you have?
First of all, and again, this is slightly different advice when you're talking about contracting work and it's really in-person hands-on stuff. But
Yeah.
for the most part, if we can avoid bringing in team members, you really want to look at contractors first.
Yep.
And I really do believe that, whether it's for someone who's going to handle your marketing and your bookkeeping or someone who's actually going to be doing the work. Now, obviously there's certain trades and stuff where you have to have employees. That's just the way it is. But like one of the things I really have enjoyed in the rescue squad is that we have volunteers and we also have paid staff. And then we have a bunch of people that come in as per diems. And having somebody come in as a per diem is like the best way to see if they're a good fit, right? Like we can see how they operate. There's not too much of a problem, like to bring them in or let go of them if you need to. And it's like a natural segue into working as full-time eventually, hopefully. Right. So in general, I really like looking at contractors first. And so when it comes to outsourcing and virtual stuff, Fiverr is like the greatest resource in my opinion. I hate that work. I don't like a lot of those sites. I think there's just a lot of bloat in them. And sorry,
You're good.
the monitor was flickering. And yeah, so that would be a big one. But there's 4 questions I always like to ask when I'm interviewing people, and I've used this in every sort of job level, every industry I can think of. 4 questions. First one is, why you? Second one is, why us? That's easy. Third question is, tell me about a time you screwed up at work and how you handle it.
I love it.
And then the fourth one is, if I don't hire you, why do you think that will be?
Yeah.
Which is a fascinating question, because what that really is doing is getting them to have some introspection about how they handled themselves in the interview.
So if they answer that question, how do you interpret each answer? I'm sure like that's very fascinating. I've never heard that one before. So you've probably heard all the answers, but how do you interpret different answers? I'm just curious.
So how you handled like the screw up at work. A lot of times what I really like to see with that question is a lot of like we language as opposed to I language, right? So
Yeah.
it's really easy if someone's like, oh, I messed up this thing for this project for a client, so I stayed up till 5 a.m. and I got it done and redid it, or I ran across town 15 different places to find this thing. That's good. That shows that you're going to get it done. But what I'd rather see is like, I messed up on this thing, and so I brought in a team member that helped me get this done, and like, they're collaborating. So I language is not bad, but it's not as good as we. The question about why won't I hire you is such an interesting one again. 90% of the time you get a really BS answer.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there's probably so many great candidates. Like, well, yeah, I guess not you. The way that I would answer that question, I haven't had to think of an answer for that in a long time. So I'm well prepared for this, obviously. But my answer to that would be like, look, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've been involved in all these different companies, all these different things. I've jumped around to all sorts of different projects and always managed different things. It's like, I bet I come off as something of a lone wolf.
Yeah.
I said, I'm sure that's what I look like. But the truth is that I've worked in many different situations where I've been a leader of a team and I've been not a leader of a team. And both of those are comfortable for me. So again, I know that on the surface, I may show up as somebody who doesn't like to be part of a team or follow the rules, but that is absolutely not the case. And then I would give specific examples. So that's really good. It's like, look, I get it. I know what I look like. I know what I sound like. Like I have some awareness of that.
Yeah.
But if you get, but in the actual situations, this is how I am and what I did. Like that's a great answer.
Yeah. So it's trying to have them be self-aware enough as to what the negative perception then may be, and then explaining away that negative perception, right?
Yeah, I love when someone's just like, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not what you're looking for. It's like, yep, nailed it.
Yeah. You can't give me an answer, then you're not very self-aware, right? There's a framework that you use, which is 3 Ds of decision-making, which is delete, deal with, or defer. How can owners apply this in their business, would you say?
So I usually use that as a way of teaching in Box Zero, but really what it is a methodology for making more effective decisions. And so I posit basically that there's only 3 ways to handle any initial encounter with a decision.
Yeah.
Obviously, if somebody says, do you want the concrete or the plaster? Like that's not the 3 Ds, but it's as you said, delete, deal with, or defer. So delete is basically saying no. And you can say, yes, got you to where you are, but no will get you to where you're going, right? So people have to be better in general about saying no for various reasons. If you can't say no, then you have to look at, is this something that I can deal with right now? If it is, and meaning like you could deal with it in the next 3 minutes without a big mindset shift, do that, right? Because if you don't, you're causing an unnecessary delay.
Yeah.
You're causing, and you're causing a delay for team members, which kind of adds up. Now, dealing with it could include deferring it, dealing with it could include delegating it.
Yeah.
Which if you have a good system in place to delegate, then that works really well. And then if you can't say no, you can't deal with it right now, then you have to defer it. And deferring is not procrastinating. It's basically making a very active decision about your time and saying, there is a better time and possibly a better place for me to do this thing you're asking me to do. And I want to do it at that time that is the most effective time for me to do it. And so it's not like I'll do this tomorrow, I'll do this later. It's like, no, I do anything having to do with finances on Friday mornings at 10 a.m. That's my finance Fridays, right? So I'm going to defer this to Friday because it's an invoice or something like that. And again, you're making an active decision about what happens with your time, and that control is very, very powerful.
Just managing your time effectively and knowing when it fits is something that a lot of people in our businesses struggle with a lot, and it causes a lot of chaos, right? And so by being able to manage their time effectively through those steps, I think is super helpful or powerful. All right, man, I love to jam, but I know we're running short on time, so I do have a couple last questions here for you that I think are very helpful for our listeners. Just cool insights about you. Now, you've written some books, which is great. If you had to choose one book that's maybe like the book for you about business, about life, that you could recommend, that's really helped shape your own personal business success, what book would you recommend to our listeners and why?
Probably the last one, which is called On Productivity.
Okay.
This was meant to be like my opus on all things about productivity. I've written 12 books at this point on productivity. This was like the final one. I hope.
This is the master one. I haven't read it, so now you mentioned, I'm going to pick it up and read it, man. So I love it.
Other than that, I'd say The Replaceable Founder, but On Productivity is really like the epitome of everything.
I love it, dude. As far as it goes, if you had to choose one business mentor you could spend a whole day with, who would it be and why? Could be alive, dead, whatever.
Oh gosh, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
No one's ever asked me that before.
There you go, man. Come with the curveball.
Harry Houdini.
Harry Houdini. That's a real interesting one. Okay, why? I want to know now. Why?
He came here as an immigrant with nothing. And he created really a new kind of an art form and magic. The escapism wasn't like a thing like he was doing it at that point.
Yeah.
Really like was a market maker in many ways. Really incredible individual. Actually, terrible businessman, honestly, in a lot of ways.
Phenomenal marketer.
Yeah, exactly. Really, really brilliant. I mean, and something as simple as when he would do his stunts where he'd be locked in like a cage with, underwater or something like that. And they would put a curtain in front of him. They wouldn't even see him. He would get out in a matter of 20 seconds. And then they would just wait for 3, 4, 5 minutes. The audience would be losing it.
Yeah.
And it was so simple in some ways, but yeah, that would be the one.
That's amazing. I love it. All about the suspense, man. Cool. So this has been fantastic. I know I've gotten a ton out of this. I'm sure our listeners have as well. If they want to get more of Ari in their life, how do they do it? How do they reach out to you? How do they get more of you?
So everything about me is at lessdoing.com. But if somebody wants to get on a conversation with me, they can get right on Voxer. You can go to voxwithari.com and reach out through Voxer. It will actually be me, not an automation, not AI, not a VA. And we can talk about your biggest productivity challenges.
Awesome. Love it, man. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here. Guys, it's been another episode here of Service Contractor All-Star Podcast. And yeah, if you want to listen more, make sure you like the episode, subscribe, listen more, and obviously reach out to Ari. Ari's been fantastic. Thanks so much for being here, my man.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys. Out.
This has been the Service Contractor All-Star Podcast. We talk about how to make more money, grow your team members, and build the business of your dreams. I'm the host, Trevor Maddox, owner of Motion Ops, the premier software for service contractors. Join us next time for more amazing content.